as I was saying, we went and visited Larintha yesterday, and Patsy made some lasagna and took over there too. And when she walked in, she said, "Well, I brought a pan of lasagna." When Nathaniel, the whole time we was there, said, "Lasagna? I don't want to eat, I'm hungry," he would say. And they kept saying, "No, we're eating a little bit." And he'd go, "Oh, Daddy." He was ready to eat. And they kept putting him off. It was pretty funny, but we were over, an hour, maybe a little longer, talking with him. And she said, I said, "Well, you need to get this boy something to eat, for he just plumb starves to death." And then he said, "Yeah, you can look at his belly there and tell he's how he's starving there." But yeah, John's over filling in for Mike this morning at his church. He had Chris Jones over there was filling in and helping him out, but Chris is down at another church now, pastoring another church right now. I guess he got a call and they asked him to come down and fill in down there for a little while. And I hadn't talked to Chris about it. He was telling me that there was a church that had gotten a hold of him to come in when they were looking for a pastor for him to fill in for a little while. So I guess he's down there, so Mike needs the help, and I told Johnny we ought to go out and help him. That's what we're here for, is to do that. So I'm going to try my best to do this, but we're in Acts chapter 10 for our Sunday school lesson this morning. I'm like John. I typically would go back and read the first part of this to you, but actually it's recapped in the second part of our Sunday school lesson, the same exact thing that happened in the first. But it starts off here with Peter's vision. And it says, "And on the morrow, as they went on the journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour." Now, that would be about noon, so it was getting time for lunchtime. And you really have to understand cooking a meal or preparing a meal back then was a lot different than it is today. If you had meat you were going to fix, you had to go kill something to prepare the meat because they didn't have refrigerators that they could just stick it in and pull it out and cook. Usually it was a pretty long process to prepare a meal. And especially it was very hot over there most of the time. And so meal prep was done all day long. And something they usually did and tried to do it hastily so the meat or whatever they had wouldn't spoil. That's why a lot of their meals were a lot of garden stuff, as we would call it, and things that they could eat, because those was easily kept longer than meat was. And Peter says that he went up on the housetop. Now, understanding that a housetop is not the same housetop that we have. Most of their houses had flat roofs on them. And they usually had an external staircase that would lead up to the top of the house. And the house was used a lot of the times for extra room. People would often gather up there, and because there would maybe a breeze or something blowing where there wouldn't be in the house. If they had guests over, a lot of times that's where they would meet and have their get-togethers, was even on top of their houses. So for Peter to go up there and prepare, and while he's waiting for the meal, to pray, and it is actually something they did quite often. They believed that the closer you could get to God, the better it was. So even getting on top of the roof would make them closer. So here they are. He's up there praying. And he says that he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made it ready, he fell into a trance. So they were preparing the meal and probably finishing it up, whoever was that house he was at. They would have been preparing it probably all morning, and then they'd also prepare all day for the evening meal as well. Bread, for instance, bread was something that they fixed on a daily basis and was a very big part of their diet. Bread that they have is not like bread we have today. How many of you have taken a loaf of bread and had it out for several days or maybe even a few weeks and it still looks about as good as it was? That's because we have so many preservatives in it. Their bread usually went bad within 24 hours. And if you go to a large part of the world today and try their bread is different than ours. I remember people talking about, and Sarah even talked about when she went over to England, how their bread was so much different than ours. It was fresh bread because they baked it every day, because they threw it out at the end of the day because it was no good by the next day. Because their bread is fresh. And so here they were probably preparing, getting ready. And the trance that Peter went into was not a trance due to his hunger. I find it curious and interesting that they put him hungering and in a trance, but the two things did not have anything to do with one or the other. But he is in this trance, and it says, and he saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descend unto him, as it had a great sheet knot at the four corners, and let down to the earth. And this vision he had, he saw something coming down from heaven, and it would have been knotted at the four corners, which would have hung, and it would have had something in the middle of it as it came down. And he said, wherein were all matters of the four-footed beast of the earth. And he said, wild beasts and creeping things and fowls of the air. There was a lot of things that apparently was within this sheet, and it kind of reminded me when I was reading this of the creation story back in Genesis, is what my mind went to, thinking of how God created all of these things, all this stuff that he had, and of course we know that he said that he had them to pass by Adam, and Adam named all of these creatures as they went by. And again, he is showing this as something else, and seeing all of the creatures. And I find it interesting that he talked about the four-footed beast of the earth, which would have been a lot of what we have as the animals today, and even the wild beast. Of course, we know in our time that these animals don't naturally get along. There's some beasts that are wild beasts that eats the tame beasts. So to see them here, and the creeping things. Creeping things a lot of times in the Bible is what they refer to, of course, of snakes and scorpions and lizards and all of those things. But also these would be considered the sea creatures, things that was in the seas and in the waters. They called them creeping things. And fowls of the air, of course, is all of the birds. Now, he says, and there came a voice to him, said, rise, Peter, kill and eat. Now, I don't know about you, but the four-footed beasts, there's some of them that I would eat, and there's some of them out there that I wouldn't want to eat. The wild beast, of course, is the same way. But now, creeping things, folks, I don't want to eat no creeping things. Now, I have tried snake one time, and that was just because it was there, and I wanted to try it because I was curious. But I don't want to eat no lizards or none of these other things that they have. Now, I know in other certain cultures, they do eat them. And they'll eat because there's other things in cultures they eat. And there's things that we eat that they probably wouldn't touch. But having these things come by and said to eat. And then Peter said, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Understand that there was a lot of things that was within their diet that they was not allowed to eat. You can go into Leviticus, and there is a long, detailed a list of things that they cannot eat. And it is one of those things that a lot of times that people will, and I've had people ask me about it. You know, well, you go by some parts of the Bible, but you don't go by all of it. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, the Old Testament tells you can't eat shrimp. Do you like shrimp? I said, yeah. Well, you're not supposed to eat it. You know, pork. Do you eat pork? Yep. Well, you're not supposed to, you know. Well, the thing of it is that list was given to the Jewish people through Abraham, and he wrote those down, and that was the dietary restrictions of those people. Now, there is a lot of people that are the Jewish faith that still follows those same dietary restrictions today. They believe that the Messiah has not come yet. They don't accept Jesus as the Messiah, so they don't recognize the New Testament. And if they did, this is the passage that we use to justify those things today. Because if you read here, it says, but Peter said these things, that he had not eaten anything. He says, then the voice spake unto him again a second time, what God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. And what it means is he's saying that he's doing away with the old ways. He is saying that what he declares as being proper and clean, for them to do so, to eat of it. And that's what I was trying to explain to the person, that's the old covenant that God had with his people, the Israelites. It has nothing to do with us today. We're not Jewish people. And if we was Jewish people and we trusted in Jesus as the Messiah, they would not go by those same restrictions today also. But that dietary stuff was just for the Jewish people. So he's turning around here and telling Peter, which was a Jew, that what he has cleansed, it is not unclean anymore. Now, I understand that there was a lot of things that was considered unclean, not just things that they ate. There was a lot of things that, and it wasn't that it caused harm to their body, but ceremonially, they was considered to be unclean if they partook of that stuff. And there were certain things, even if they touched, they would be considered unclean. They wouldn't touch anything that's dead. So there was a lot, because, we can read where they talked about going into the temple, into the holiest of the holiest. They had to make sure they were clean and that everything was proper and pure in their lives. So that's one of the reasons why they tried to stay away from those things. So ceremonially, when they could enter the temple, if they was considered unclean, if they would touch a dead body, or they had to go so many days and before they would be considered clean again, and so many other things. So they would try to stay away from all that stuff so that they could enter the temple and worship God. But he's telling Peter here to go ahead and eat those things. There is nothing in the world wrong with the things that he has. And I wanted to continue to reading in the Bible just right below this till we come to where we're at. It says that this was done thrice. So 3 times this sheet came down and was opened up for Peter to see. And he says, and the vessels were received up again into heaven. So 3 times it came down for him to see. And I wonder why 3 times. Was one suffice that would have done it? Well, I was thinking back, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. So here he was to come back down 3 times to represent the importance. We studied last Wednesday night when he asked Peter, did he love him? How many times did he ask him? 3 times. See, it's a part of the Bible. It's to do things 3 times. The other thing that I found interesting is if you study And this was one of the things that we had in college. It was a sociology class that I had. And it says to tell somebody something before they remember, it takes 3 times. So even if you're advertising something, you have to tell them 3 times. Most people, when we first meet somebody and they tell you your name, how many of you remember it the first time they tell you? Probably not very many of you, because then what happens is, for me sometimes, it takes a while for me. Somebody will say, well, what, you just met them, what was their name? Well, I didn't pay attention. How many of us do that? They tell you it takes 3 times of somebody telling you something, telling their name 3 times for you to remember. Now, they told us in those classes, though, that to remember somebody's name, and I don't hardly ever do it. If somebody tells me their name, usually you try to think of somebody or something that rhymes with them, or somebody that they remind you of that has the same name. It's a tool to help you to remember their name. Now, I ran into a politician several years ago that was a very successful politician, and we were talking about how do you remember so many people's names that you see? He said, I don't remember. He said, what I normally do, if I go up to somebody and they shake my hand, I said, do you remember? He said, yes, Ian, but what was your name again? And if they would say, well, it's Barry. Well, I know you as Barry, but which, I can't remember the last name. Or if they told you the last name, well, I know you as a McKean, but I just couldn't remember which one you were. So that was a tool he used to make people think, well, he really did remember me. Well, he didn't. It's just a tool they use. So there you go, folks. I threw that one in for free. Didn't cost you a thing on that one. But it says that this was done thrice, and the vessel was received up into heaven. But now while Peter doubted in himself what the vision which he had seen should mean. So even Peter doubted. What is it exactly that he's trying to tell him? What is it that is so significant about these are things that Jewish people just did not do? They didn't eat of these animals. They didn't touch these animals. They didn't even own some of these animals. Oh my goodness, they wouldn't dare own a pig or have anything to do with a pig. So why would all of a sudden he's saying that these things now is proper and good? It's because of what is about to happen in Peter's life. He says, while he was yet seeing this, he says, behold, the men which were sent by Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house and stood before the gate. Now, and we're going to see this in a little bit. Cornelius is going to tell what happened, and that he sent these men. And at the same time, as Simon come out of this trance, he's thinking about the things that had just happened and trying to get a meaning of it. Why is he showing this to me, that these men come up? But they called and asked whether Simon, whose surname Peter, were lodged there. And while Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, behold, 3 men seek thee. Now, another thing that I find interesting was during this first conversation that he had, when these things come down, there was a voice that spoke to him, and I think he recognized the voice. I think it was Jesus spoke to him. He walked with him for 3.5 years. He would know in his voice. Because here he didn't ask, Lord, who is it? Or who is this that speaks to him? I think he knew it was Jesus. And then this voice talked to him again and said, there's some men at the gate. Go with them. They seek thee. He says, arise therefore and get thee down and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent him. So Peter went down to the men which were sent before him from Cornelius, and said, behold, I am he whom ye seek. What is the cause thereof you are come? Peter was still in the dark, wasn't he? All he had was this vision that he had of things that was once considered unclean. He says now is clean, that he has blessed them. And then he had these men to show up to his door. What is it that you need? Now, understanding that these men were sent from Cornelius and from Caesarea. Caesarea is where they were sent from, and they said in one of the things that I read said that it would have been a journey of 3/4 of a day to travel that far. You could do it in a day; it wouldn't take a whole day. But for them to leave in the morning, which they were ordered to do, there was 3 of them that went. 2 men that was sent from Cornelius, but along with the centurion that went with him. The centurion would have been there to protect them so that no harm would come to them. So Peter was wondering, what is it? He's asking, what is it that you're here for? What is your business? You know, we'd all probably be curious when strangers show up, and one of them being the centurion, a soldier. Kind of like the police showing up at your door now, and Richard, is Richard here? You'd probably ask him, well, what is it you want with Richard? Right? So here we are. We have these people that have shown up, and Peter's asking. And they said, Cornelius, a centurion. Now, what is a centurion? That would have been someone, and it says back here in the beginning of which we didn't read, that he was a centurion of the band called the Italian band. And it says that would have been about 1,000 men that he would have been overseeing. So it would have been easy for him to send someone, being over that many people. He would have been a pretty well-known person. He had a great authority in the land. But it also described him in the part of it, it said that he was a devout man. And one that, in verse 2 of this, he said a devout man, and one that feared God with all his house, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. This was a man that was not a Jew. He was a Roman. But it says that he was a devout man, that he loved the Lord. So somewhere in this time, being in this area of where they was at, now I understand about this city that he was in, Caesarea. It was an area in the Roman Empire. It was built about 10 years before the birth of Jesus, and it was built by Herod the Great. And then it was part of the Roman Empire, but it was named after the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus. That's why it's called Caesarea. It was structured on the Mediterranean Sea, and it was about 65 miles north of Jerusalem. Now, I don't know how many of y'all could travel 65 miles in a day, or 3/4 of a day, but they must have been doing it on horses or something, but I don't even know if I could travel that far on a horse in less than a day's time. But this was an important city, so it was where they had the trade. It was on the Mediterranean Sea. So it was a seaport, and it was very important. So they sent these people to Peter to bring him to him, because Peter has no idea what it's for. They're just saying here that he was a devout man that feared God, and his whole household, and that he prayed to God. So it sounds like that God probably answered a prayer for him. And he says, and they said, Cornelius, the centurion, a just man, and one that feared God, and of good report among all the nation of the Jews, was warned by God by a holy angel to send for thee into his house and to hear words of thee. So again, we get another description of Cornelius. He was a just man. The Jewish people loved him. So somewhere through that, he accepted and followed after the God of the Jewish people that he was sent there to oversee. Folks, how good of a God we got. That somebody that come in to your area that was there to watch over you, to collect your taxes, to oversee and make sure you didn't get out of hand. Really, they was the military that was crushing them. But through your God, you was able to convert him over to your religion. He must have seen something in these Jewish people that was missing in his life. And when I think of that, folks, that is the same thing that we need to do with the people around us today. They need to be able to look upon us and see that we have a different life than they do. That we live differently, that we act differently, we talk differently than they do. And by doing so, they need to see and realize that there's something different in our lives and something that seems better in our life than theirs, and that's how we're going to win them today. The same way that the Jewish people won over this centurion. But he was a just man. He was one that feared the Lord, they said here, and have a good report. And an angel came to him and said, go get Peter. You need to hear what he says. Do you think Peter at this point is starting to wonder, what does this all have to, somewhere God has got to open it up to him and tell him what's going on here. Then called he them in, and they lodged there for the night. And on the morrow, Peter went away with them, and certain brethren from Joppa accompanying him. Where does this other lesson start? Oh, I'm not down there yet. So the morrow after they entered into Caesarea, and Cornelius waited for them, and had called together his kinsmen and near friends. Now they knew Peter was coming the next day. They knew that he needed to hear the words of Peter. So he brought in his whole household, which being a centurion, he would have had several servants. He would have had probably a lot of people. He called them in, and not only that, all of his dear friends that was nearby. He wanted them to hear. God spoke to him, sent an angel to him, and said this. So it was very important. Hey, folks, how important would it be to us if God spoke to us and said that he's going to send someone to speak to us? How many people would we want to say, hey, come and witness and see what's going to happen? Cornelius called all of these people together. And as Peter was coming in, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter took him up, saying, stand up. I myself also am a man. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many that were come together. Peter may have been surprised at the crowd. And he said unto him, ye know how that it was an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. That was the law. They was to keep themselves separate as Jews. You did not go into the house of someone that wasn't a Jew. You didn't meet with them. Remember when Jesus was sitting and eating with his disciples, and the lady that came in that was not a Jew, and he called her a dog who wanted to eat at the table. And she said, well, even the dogs get the crumbs. See, that's how they looked upon people that was not Jew, because they were God's people. They were the chosen people. So therefore, no one else could be up with their standards. They couldn't possibly be. Now, there was people of other countries that converted to Judaism, and there was a lot of steps they had to go through. One thing, they had to be circumcised, and there's so many things that had to convert. But it was unlawful, people said here, for them to come into a house of someone that wasn't a Jew. But this little 3-letter word, but God have shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. That is what the vision that he had of the sheet coming down and then the things that was in it. Peter knows now what he meant. If God has called them, as he has called Cornelius, he's called him. He's making him a part of his kingdom. Therefore, he's no longer unclean or common. That's the same way that we came in. We are not Jews by birth, but we are a Jew at heart. That is what the vision means. Whoever God calls and chooses, no matter what nationality, whatever, no matter where they're from, they're not common or unclean. He says, therefore came I unto you without gainslaying, or what that is objection. I'm not coming to you if they was such a thing happen on most of the time with a Jew, what they would do is if they met with somebody that was called to their house, they met with them outside. They didn't go in their house. He would want all of them to come outside. But Peter went in with no objection. As soon as I was sent for you, I asked therefore for what intent that you sent for me. He's asking Cornelius, what is it that you're wanting for me? And that's where we're coming into this second part of our lesson today, which is going to recap what he had in the first part of it. And Cornelius said, 4 days ago, I was fasting unto this hour. Here is someone that was fasting and doing what the Jewish people did. He was fasting and in prayer, and as he was doing so, and at the 9th hour, which would have been 3 o'clock in the evening, I prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. Now that is how the angels are described in the Bible so often, that they are in bright clothing. And I believe that most of us, if we see that even today, we would still be frightened and concerned. And said, Cornelius, thy prayer is heard. His prayer is heard. That was the message from the angel. Folks, how would you like to be in prayer and an angel comes before you and says, God has heard your prayers? I believe he hears all of our prayers anyway, but wouldn't it be great to have an angel to come and tell you that he heard you? And thine alms are had in remembrance in the sight of God. Now, alms, a lot of people refer to as money, but it also is giving of your time. Anything that you do that uplifts the kingdom of God is your alms. That's what you give. Cornelius was good at that. He gave money, he gave of his time, he gave of the resources that he had to help out the Jewish people and those that was around him. It says that God has seen that. He recognizes it, and he's going to reward him here with something. He says, send therefore to Joppa and call hither Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodged in the house of one Simon, a tanner, by the seashore, who, when he cometh, shall speak unto you. So that's what happened. This angel spoke to him, to Cornelius, and Cornelius sent these people to go get him and bring him, just as the angel had told him to do. Pretty good story, isn't it? He said, and immediately, therefore I sent to thee, and thou hast well done what thou art come. Now therefore are we all here present before God to hear all things that are commanded thee of God. So he's telling Peter, we want to hear what you got to say about God. We want to hear of what it is that the angel had said that you was going to tell him. Boy, I don't know, but I'd be thinking about this time if I was Peter. Boy, I better have some good words. Right? I often hear people talk about when they witness to people or when they go up and talk to people, they're backwards about it, or they don't want to do it, or they're afraid to do it. Well, I don't know what to say. God will tell you what to say. That spirit that lives within us will tell you what to say. Peter didn't sit down and prepare anything before he went. He didn't know what he was going to go there for. He didn't write out his message. I like to type mine out on the computer. I know he didn't have one of those. He just relied upon the Lord to tell him. When Peter preached at the day of Pentecost and thousands were saved, he didn't have a prepared message. He just spoke from the heart about Jesus, whom ye crucified. So it says here, then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of person. Isn't that something? Peter has now understand all that has happened. The vision that he had the day prior of what God calls unclean, what God has cleansed, that call not thou come. He may not have understood it at the moment, but right now, at this very point, he understood what it meant. He perceived that God was not going to come just for the Jews. That Jesus had come for everyone. His kingdom is not just for the Jews. It is for everyone. Everyone's invited. Peter is now seeing that. God is no respecter of person. Isn't that something great to think about? We know that it says that he came to his own and his own received him not. But he turned to us to make them jealous. And I'm glad he did so. Because it gave an opportunity for the whole world to believe and come to him. God is no respecter of persons. But in every nation, he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. Every nation, everyone has to come. All of us. We can also go over and here in a little section over here in Galatians, it says that there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ. Who does that leave out? He mentions these groups. Jews, of course, Jews knew that they were the chosen people of God. Greeks. Greek was the language that a lot of them spoke, or at least they wrote in, and most of them understood it. Greeks thought that they were the smart ones, the intelligent ones, that they were above most people because they were higher thinkers than other people. They were theologians. They were smart people. But he says that there's no difference between them and us. There's neither bond nor free. Bond, of course, was people that was what they called slavery at the time. Their slavery was all different than our slavery, than what we had. Their slavery was usually indentured people or people that owed money or people that worked for them. I think even John talked about that in his last Sunday lesson of how people would come to work. And there was usually every 7 years, and that's what John covered last time. There was every 7 years, it was called the year of Jubilee. And in the year of Jubilee, all the debts were forgiven and everything would reset and supposed to go back again. Now, after a few years, they no longer honored the year of Jubilee. But that's what God had ordered him. So here we see that there's no difference between those that worked for others and those that were free, that had the others to working for them. There is neither male nor female. Now, there's a lot of people out there today that I've heard them use this text when they're talking about this gender stuff, of how there's different genders and all this stuff. I've heard them use this passage to mean that there's neither male nor female. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying there is no difference in your soul. The soul that lives within us, we're all the same. We each have one, and there's no difference between mine and anyone else's. For ye are all one in Christ. Once we become Christ, and that Spirit goes, His Holy Spirit comes within us, and we receive that, we are all one in Christ. We always say there's no big I's or little U's. There's no me or there's no. But we all have that, or no I in team. I always told them that there is an M and an E, is what I always told them. But there's no I in team. But what it means is we're all work together. We are all working towards, and we all should help each other get to that goal that we want to accomplish. And that is to make heaven our home. It says that if you be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. And the reason he put that in there was a lot of people that rejected Jesus, that rejected that or believed that they were the chosen people and they were going to heaven because they were of Abraham's descent. And of being from Abraham's descent, they deserved that right, and that was their right, and that was just it. That no one else could get in. There's still a lot of people in the Jewish faith believes that today. That if you're not from Abraham's seed or of his lineage, which is a Jew, then you're not getting in. But Jesus did away with all that. What did he tell them when he come up to them and talked to them and said, "Don't tell me," or that was John the Baptist telling them that don't tell me that you're from Abraham's seed. He called them vipers, did he? You're a bunch of just old snakes. Well, I hope you got something out of it. We're ending a little early, but that's okay. Maybe we'll fellowship here just a little bit, talk a little bit. Anyone have any questions or comments? Well, I guess John will be back next week, so.